In the stillness of the night, in the moments between the fading light of day and the embrace of sleep, there is a heaviness that slowly descends upon us. It's a quiet, almost imperceptible weight, but one that presses into our chest, making it hard to breathe, difficult to focus. The usual comfort of silence no longer feels soothing, but instead, it amplifies the restlessness that lingers within. It's in these moments when the world is seemingly at rest that our minds become the most turbulent. The worries, the regrets, the anxiety, all come rushing to the surface, uninvited but persistent. You may find yourself sitting in your favorite chair, feeling an overwhelming sense of disquiet. Thoughts that seem like distant echoes grow louder, pulling you further away from the peace you crave. You ask yourself, why can't I quiet my mind? Why can't I find rest, even when the world around me is silent? You try to breathe deeply, to push away the thoughts, but they continue to fill your mind with a restless chatter. But what if this anxiety, this discomfort, wasn't a sign that something was wrong with you? What if it wasn't an illness or a punishment, but a message from within, urging you to look deeper, to understand more about yourself, your fears, your desires, and your life? In Buddhist teachings, suffering is not something to be avoided or feared. It is not a sign of weakness or a punishment for wrongdoings. It is, in fact, an intrinsic part of the human experience. We all encounter suffering in one form or another in our lives, and anxiety as a form of suffering is no exception. However, Buddhism offers a radical rethinking of how we view suffering, particularly anxiety. Rather than seeing it as an adversary or something to be eradicated, Buddhism invites us to approach it with a sense of curiosity and acceptance. Suffering, in the Buddhist sense, is not to be fought against, but to be understood. It is a doorway, an opening that, when we walk through it, can lead to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. The Buddha taught that suffering is not something to avoid, but something to examine and learn from. It is a profound opportunity for growth, for transformation, for clarity. It is through our struggles and our suffering that we often discover our true selves, our deepest fears, and our most powerful desires. When we face anxiety with resistance, we reinforce its power over us. We try to push it away, to ignore it, to pretend it doesn't exist. But this resistance only feeds the cycle of suffering. The more we resist, the stronger the anxiety becomes until it overwhelms us completely. The key then is not to fight against anxiety, but to meet it with understanding, to embrace it with compassion and mindfulness. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting with your anxiety, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. What does it have to show you? What is it trying to tell you? Rather than running from it, you take a step closer, allowing yourself to feel the full extent of its presence. You notice how it affects your thoughts, your body, your emotions. You pay attention to the subtle signals it sends, the way it tugs at your mind and heart. Instead of pushing it away, you invite it in with kindness and curiosity. As you sit with your anxiety, you begin to notice something profound. Anxiety is not a constant force. It rises and falls like the waves of the ocean. Sometimes it surges, overwhelming you with its intensity. But just as the waves eventually recede, so too does anxiety. It is impermanent. It is not a fixed part of your being, but a passing experience. This realization is liberating. It shifts your relationship with anxiety from one of fear and resistance to one of understanding and acceptance. You no longer see anxiety as an obstacle to peace, but as a guide, pointing you toward deeper self-awareness and insight. The Buddha's wisdom reveals that when we shift our perspective, suffering becomes a gateway to something greater. It is through facing our anxiety, rather than avoiding it, that we uncover the root causes of our distress. Often, anxiety arises from our attachment to certain outcomes, our desire for control, or our fear of the unknown. We worry about the future, about things that may never come to pass. But when we learn to let go of this attachment, we free ourselves from the grip of anxiety. One of the core teachings of Buddhism is the concept of impermanence, or anicca. Everything in life is constantly changing, including our thoughts, our emotions, and our experiences. When we hold on to something, whether it's a thought, an expectation, or a fear, we create suffering. But when we learn to let go, to accept the ebb and flow of life, we find peace. Anxiety is a part of this process of change. It rises, it falls, and it passes, just as all things do. In the Buddhist tradition, mindfulness plays a crucial role in transforming our relationship with suffering. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment, without judgment, without clinging to the past or the future. When we practice mindfulness, we observe our thoughts and emotions with detachment, as if we are watching them from a distance. We don't identify with them, nor do we react to them. We simply observe, allowing them to come and go, like clouds passing through the sky. By cultivating mindfulness, we learn to meet anxiety with awareness rather than with fear. We notice when it arises, we observe how it affects our body and mind, and we let it pass without attachment. This practice of mindfulness creates space between us and our anxiety, allowing us to respond to it with clarity and wisdom, rather than reacting out of habit or fear. As we continue to walk the Buddhist path, we come to understand that suffering is not something to be feared or avoided, but something to be embraced with compassion and understanding. Through this understanding, we find peace. Anxiety, like all forms of suffering, is a natural part of life. But when we approach it with an open heart and a clear mind, it no longer holds power over us. It becomes a teacher, guiding us toward greater wisdom, greater peace, and greater freedom. So the next time anxiety arises, don't fight it. Don't try to push it away or escape from it. Instead, sit with it. Allow yourself to feel it fully, to explore it with mindfulness and compassion. See what it has to teach you, and remember that, like all things, it too shall pass. In this way, you will find that anxiety is not your enemy, but your ally, helping you to discover the peace that lies beneath the surface of your thoughts, your fears, and your desires. Through this process, you will cultivate a deeper understanding of yourself and a greater sense of peace, not just in the quiet moments of life, but in every moment. In life, anxiety doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It grows from something deeper, from patterns of thought and emotion that shape how we respond to the world. From a Buddhist perspective, these roots are known as attachment and aversion. These two forces lie at the core of our suffering, often without us even realizing it. They are the invisible threads that pull us toward or push us away from experiences, shaping our emotional world and fueling the anxiety that we feel. Attachment is like the grasping hand of the mind. It's that part of us that clings tightly to what we love, our possessions, our comfort zones, our relationships, our plans for the future. Think about the way we hold on to things we don't want to lose, whether it's a treasured memory, a familiar routine, or a loved one. Attachment promises us stability, but in reality, it sets us up for anxiety. When life threatens to change, when those things we hold dear begin to slip through our fingers, anxiety rises. We fear the loss, the change, the uncertainty that comes with it. Don't take this from me, our minds plead. And with this fear, the tight grip of attachment only tightens. But attachment is not the only root of our suffering. There's another force that also plays a significant role in fueling anxiety: aversion. Aversion is the instinct to push away what we don't want: pain, loss, discomfort, or even the unknown. It's the part of us that resists what feels unpleasant. When we face discomfort, be it physical, emotional, or psychological, we react by rejecting it, trying to make it go away, hoping that if we fight hard enough, it will simply disappear. Yet, as the Buddha taught, resistance to discomfort doesn't end it. Instead, it prolongs it. Pain, loss, aging, and even loneliness are inevitable parts of life. The more we struggle against them, the stronger they appear, creating more suffering in the process. Anxiety, in essence, is born from our refusal to accept change, to accept impermanence. We live in a world that is in constant flux. Our bodies age, our relationships evolve. The world around us is constantly shifting, and yet we often try to hold on to things as if they could last forever. This attachment to permanence is where our anxiety begins. When we resist change, when we grasp at what is fleeting, we invite suffering. The refusal to let go of attachment and aversion keeps us locked in a cycle of emotional turmoil, unable to find peace. Buddhism teaches us that everything is impermanent. Nothing stays the same, and that includes our emotions, our desires, and our attachments. The Buddha's wisdom encourages us to embrace this truth, to let go of our attachment to things and our aversion to what we fear. By doing so, we free ourselves from the grip of anxiety. We stop fighting against life and start flowing with it. To truly understand how attachment and aversion create anxiety, we must look within ourselves. We need to observe the ways in which we cling to certain desires, fears, or expectations. We need to notice when we are resisting the natural flow of life. It might be in the way we hold on to a relationship that is no longer serving us, or in the way we avoid difficult emotions, hoping they will disappear on their own. These patterns of attachment and aversion are deeply ingrained in our subconscious, but they can be recognized and transformed through mindfulness and awareness. Mindfulness is the practice of observing our thoughts and emotions without judgment. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to notice the moments when we are attached to something or when we are pushing something away. We can observe these moments with curiosity without the need to act on them. Instead of reacting with anxiety, we can choose to let go of the need to control or resist. We can accept that change is a part of life and that our attachment to things does not bring lasting happiness. Through mindfulness, we create a space between ourselves and our emotions. We stop identifying with our anxieties, realizing that they are temporary and ever-changing, just like everything else. We become the observers of our experiences rather than the victims of them. And in this space, peace can arise. Letting go of attachment doesn't mean that we stop caring about the things we love, but it does mean that we stop relying on them for our happiness. We can love deeply, but we must also understand that love is not something we can possess or control. The same applies to everything in life. We can enjoy the good things, but we must recognize that they are not permanent, and that is okay. When we release our attachment to permanence, we begin to experience life as it truly is, fluid, changing, and full of possibilities. Similarly, letting go of aversion doesn't mean that we stop feeling discomfort or pain. It means that we stop fighting against it. We learn to accept it as part of the human experience, and in doing so, we reduce the power it has over us. Instead of resisting life's challenges, we meet them with equanimity, accepting whatever arises without judgment or fear. This is the true meaning of peace, not the absence of difficulties, but the ability to stay calm and centered in the midst of them. In Buddhism, this understanding of attachment and aversion is central to the path of liberation. The Buddha taught that by understanding the nature of suffering, we can free ourselves from it. When we learn to let go of our attachments and aversions, we create the space for true freedom. This is not a freedom from the challenges of life, but a freedom from the mental and emotional chains that bind us. It is the freedom to experience life fully without the constant weight of anxiety. The process of letting go is not easy. It requires patience, compassion, and a deep willingness to look within. But it is also a process of great reward. When we release our grip on the things that cause us anxiety, we open ourselves to a life of peace, contentment, and joy. We stop being controlled by our desires and fears and begin to live in harmony with the world around us. So if you find yourself struggling with anxiety, ask yourself, what am I attached to? What am I resisting? And how can I begin to let go? By reflecting on these questions and practicing mindfulness, you can begin to transform your anxiety into wisdom. You can learn to navigate the ups and downs of life with grace and ease, free from the grip of attachment and aversion. In this journey of self-awareness, remember that the Buddha did not promise an easy path, but he did offer a way forward, a way to find peace amidst the chaos. By embracing the impermanence of life and letting go of our attachment and aversion, we can free ourselves from the endless cycle of anxiety. And in doing so, we can find the peace that we have been searching for all along. Have you ever been overwhelmed by a thought that seems to take over your mind? It's as if that thought becomes a part of you, defining who you are, shaping how you see the world. Anxiety is like this. At times, it feels so intense, so persistent, that we begin to identify with it, thinking, I am anxious. This is who I am. We may feel trapped, overwhelmed by the constant rush of thoughts, emotions, and worries that seem to control us. But what if I told you that these thoughts aren't you? What if they are simply visitors in your mind, passing by, transient and impermanent? The Buddha's teachings invite us to challenge this misconception. He offers a profound insight that can free us from this mental entrapment. This too is just a thought. It's a simple but transformative realization. Not every thought is true, and not every thought deserves our attention. In fact, many of our anxious thoughts are simply echoes of old fears, old patterns of worry. They've been passed down from our past experiences, from our habits, or perhaps even from the fears of those who came before us. But these thoughts are not facts. They are just passing clouds in the vast sky of our awareness. When we think about anxiety in this way, it becomes easier to distance ourselves from it. We don't have to believe every thought that arises in our minds. We can choose to let them pass, just as clouds drift across the sky, not lasting forever, not holding any weight. The moment we recognize that these thoughts don't define us, we begin to free ourselves from their grip. We are not the storm, we are the sky that holds it. This practice of non-identification is a cornerstone of Buddhist wisdom. It teaches us to observe our thoughts without becoming them. It's not about pushing thoughts away or pretending they don't exist. It's about observing them with clarity, seeing them for what they are. Transient mental formations, like waves on the surface of an ocean. We don't have to get caught up in every wave that rises. We don't need to believe that every thought we have is the truth. By recognizing that our thoughts are temporary, we start to break free from their control. It may sound simple, but this is a profound shift in how we relate to our minds. Instead of being consumed by our thoughts, we learn to stand beside them. We become the observer, watching the thoughts come and go, like leaves floating down a river. They are not who we are. They do not define us. We are something much greater, much more expansive than the thoughts that arise in our minds. When we repeat the phrase, "This is just a thought," we are gently reminding ourselves of this truth. This is not a denial of our feelings, but an invitation to see them as they truly are, not as permanent truths, but as temporary states of mind. By doing so, we begin to see that we have a choice. We can choose to let the thought go, to not become attached to it. We can choose to allow it to drift away, just as clouds move across the sky. This practice is not about suppressing our emotions or thoughts. It's about acknowledging them, seeing them for what they are, and then letting them be without letting them control us. It's a form of liberation. We don't need to fight against our thoughts, because when we stop identifying with them, we stop giving them power over us. We are no longer prisoners to our own minds. We are free. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting quietly, perhaps meditating or simply observing your thoughts. As a thought arises, you notice it. Maybe it's a feeling of anxiety or worry or sadness. You feel the pull, the urge to latch onto that thought, to let it define you. But instead of following it, you simply say, "This is just a thought." You acknowledge it, but you don't let it take hold of you. And slowly, gently, it begins to fade away. It was never really you to begin with. It was just a passing moment. By practicing this over and over, you begin to notice that your mind is not as chaotic as it once seemed. You begin to see that you can create space between yourself and your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that holds them. This is the power of mindfulness, the ability to observe without attachment, to see things clearly without being swept away by them. This practice can be applied not only in meditation, but in everyday life. The next time you feel anxious or overwhelmed, pause and say to yourself, "This is just a thought." When you feel the weight of worry pressing down on you, remember that it's just a thought passing through your mind. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to act on it. Just observe it, let it come, and let it go. As you continue this practice, you'll start to notice a shift in how you experience life. You won't be as easily swept up by the waves of emotion that come and go. You'll be more present, more grounded, more at peace. The storms will still arise, but they won't overwhelm you. You'll stand firm, like the sky, holding the storm without becoming it. This is the power of mindfulness, the power of non-identification, and the wisdom that the Buddha offers us. By learning to see our thoughts for what they are, just thoughts, we can break free from the endless cycle of worry and anxiety. We can live with greater peace, greater clarity, and greater freedom. Remember, the next time you feel the grip of anxiety tightening, Say to yourself, this too is just a thought. And in that moment, you'll reclaim your peace. In life, there are moments when anxiety overwhelms us, as though a heavy storm clouds our minds. In such times, we often feel helpless, as though we are at war with our own thoughts and emotions. But what if I told you that anxiety, rather than being an enemy, could become a guide? That's where the Buddhist teachings of mindfulness and compassion step in, offering us a different approach to the struggles we face within ourselves. Mindfulness, in its simplest form, is the practice of being fully present in the moment. It's about anchoring ourselves to the here and now, rather than being swept away by the currents of anxiety, fear, and stress. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting quietly, breathing deeply, and feeling the weight of your body against the earth. The air fills your lungs, and with each breath, you are reminded that you are alive, you are here, and this moment is the only one that truly matters. When anxiety arises, mindfulness teaches us not to fight it, not to resist it, but to sit with it, to observe it with full awareness and acceptance. This practice is not about pushing away the discomfort, but about creating space between us and the anxiety. Instead of being consumed by it, we notice its sensations, acknowledging it without judgment or self-blame. The Buddhist teachings on mindfulness invite us to see our emotions as they are, not as threats or obstacles, but as temporary states that come and go like passing clouds. When anxiety arises, we don't need to label it as bad or wrong. We don't need to let it define us or determine our state of being. Mindfulness allows us to be with our anxiety, to experience it fully without being controlled by it. It's like standing by the shore of an ocean, watching the waves crash, but knowing you don't have to be swept into the water. You can simply observe and remain grounded. But there is more to the Buddhist path than mindfulness alone. The practice of compassion, both for ourselves and for others, completes the picture, softening the sharp edges of our inner turmoil. In times of anxiety, the mind often turns harsh, critical, and unforgiving. We may find ourselves asking, why am I so weak? Why can't I find peace? Why can't I handle this better? These thoughts can be cruel, leaving us feeling even more isolated and helpless. Buddhism teaches us a different way to view our struggles. Instead of harsh self-criticism, we are called to embrace self-compassion. This doesn't mean indulging ourselves or avoiding difficult emotions. It means recognizing our shared humanity and vulnerability. It means treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer to a dear friend. When you feel anxious, give yourself the gift of understanding. Acknowledge the difficulty you are experiencing without judgment. Tell yourself, it's okay to feel this way. I am human, and I am doing my best. Compassion softens the mind's critical voice, transforming it from a harsh and unforgiving critic into a gentle, nurturing presence. Buddhism reminds us that suffering is a universal experience. We all face anxiety, fear, and doubt at times. But we don't have to face it alone, and we don't have to face it with a heart filled with self-blame or shame. Self-compassion allows us to recognize that our pain is not a sign of weakness, but a part of the human condition. Just as we offer compassion to others, we can extend that same kindness to ourselves. It's about giving ourselves permission to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, and to grow through our struggles. When mindfulness and compassion work together, they have the power to transform anxiety from an enemy into a teacher. Anxiety is no longer something to avoid or escape from. Instead, it becomes an opportunity to deepen our understanding of ourselves and our emotions. It guides us to greater peace and acceptance. We learn to accept ourselves as we are, with all of our fears and imperfections. We learn to sit with our discomfort and find stillness within it. The Buddha's wisdom teaches that peace is not something that comes from the outside. It is something we cultivate from within. Through mindfulness, we become aware of the present moment, and through compassion, we learn to be kind to ourselves and others. These practices allow us to find peace in the midst of chaos, to find light in the darkness of anxiety. We may never be able to control every thought, every emotion, or every circumstance in our lives, but through mindfulness and compassion, we can control how we respond to them. Mindfulness, in its simplest form, is the practice of being fully present in the moment. It's about anchoring ourselves to the here and now, rather than being swept away by the currents of anxiety, fear, and stress. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting quietly, breathing deeply, and feeling the weight of your body against the earth. The air fills your lungs, and with each breath, you are reminded that you are alive, you are here, and this moment is the only one that truly matters. When anxiety arises, mindfulness teaches us not to fight it, not to resist it, but to sit with it, to observe it with full awareness and acceptance. This practice is not about pushing away the discomfort, but about creating space between us and the anxiety. Instead of being consumed by it, we notice its sensations, acknowledging it without judgment or self-blame. The Buddhist teachings on mindfulness invite us to see our emotions as they are, not as threats or obstacles, but as temporary states that come and go like passing clouds. When anxiety arises, we don't need to label it as bad or wrong. We don't need to let it define us or determine our state of being. Mindfulness allows us to be with our anxiety, to experience it fully without being controlled by it. It's like standing by the shore of an ocean, watching the waves crash, but knowing you don't have to be swept into the water. You can simply observe and remain grounded. But there is more to the Buddhist path than mindfulness alone. The practice of compassion, both for ourselves and for others, completes the picture, softening the sharp edges of our inner turmoil. In times of anxiety, the mind often turns harsh, critical, and unforgiving. We may find ourselves asking, "Why am I so weak? Why can't I find peace? Why can't I handle this better?" These thoughts can be cruel, leaving us feeling even more isolated and helpless. Buddhism teaches us a different way to view our struggles. Instead of harsh self-criticism, we are called to embrace self-compassion. This doesn't mean indulging ourselves or avoiding difficult emotions. It means recognizing our shared humanity and vulnerability. It means treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer to a dear friend. When you feel anxious, give yourself the gift of understanding. Acknowledge the difficulty you are experiencing without judgment. Tell yourself, "It's okay to feel this way. I am human, and I am doing my best." Compassion softens the mind's critical voice, transforming it from a harsh and unforgiving critic into a gentle, nurturing presence. Buddhism reminds us that suffering is a universal experience. We all face anxiety, fear, and doubt at times. But we don't have to face it alone, and we don't have to face it with a heart filled with self-blame or shame. Self-compassion allows us to recognize that our pain is not a sign of weakness, but a part of the human condition. Just as we offer compassion to others, we can extend that same kindness to ourselves. It's about giving ourselves permission to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, and to grow through our struggles. When mindfulness and compassion work together, they have the power to transform anxiety from an enemy into a teacher. Anxiety is no longer something to avoid or escape from. Instead, it becomes an opportunity to deepen our understanding of ourselves and our emotions. It guides us to greater peace and acceptance. We learn to accept ourselves as we are, with all of our fears and imperfections. We learn to sit with our discomfort and find stillness within it. The Buddha's wisdom teaches that peace is not something that comes from the outside. It is something we cultivate from within. Through mindfulness, we become aware of the present moment, and through compassion, we learn to be kind to ourselves and others. These practices allow us to find peace in the midst of chaos, to find light in the darkness of anxiety. We may never be able to control every thought, every emotion, or every circumstance in our lives, but through mindfulness and compassion, we can control how we respond to them.